Good morning. Now I am going to discuss the subject irrigation and hydraulic structures. The subject majorly covers the structures and design principles of reservoirs and dams. The total syllabus is divided into 5 units. First units are storage works, second unit on gravity dam, third unit earth dams and spillway structures, fourth unit diversion structures, and fifth unit canal outlets. So now we will start with first unit storage works reservoirs. In this unit, majorly we will cover the types of reservoirs, selection of site for reservoir, zones of storage, reservoir yield, estimation capacity of reservoir, and reservoir sedimentation, and also dams, types of dams, and site selection for dams. So now we have different types of dams in India for the agriculture, irrigation, hydropower, like that. So the major dams in Telangana are Nagarjuna Sagar Reservoir, Srisailam Reservoir, Sriram Sagar Reservoir, and Musi Reservoir. So all these are major multi-purpose reservoirs constructed for drinking, agriculture, hydropower, industrial, flood control, like that purposes. So what is the reservoir? A reservoir is an artificial lake formed by constructing a dam across a river. So the reservoir is the storing capacity of water, the place where the water is stored, that is called the reservoir. And the dam is the structure constructed to store the water, is called the dam. Both are interlinked. Where the dam is constructed, automatically reservoir is formed. Where the reservoir is formed, there the dam is already constructed. So reservoir and dam are interlinked. Dams and reservoir are the most important and expensive elements in multi-purpose river basin development. Therefore, they require very careful planning, design, and operation. So, when coming to the reservoir and dam structure, this is the reservoir. And this is the dam. In dam reservoir side, the wall of the dam is straight, and that is called reservoir side. Dam reservoir side is called the upstream area, and the water released from the dam to the river is called the downstream. So, for releasing water purpose, we constructed the spillway. So, through spillway, the water is released to the river from the reservoir. So, majorly it is the reservoir, dam, spillway crust, and downstream. The reservoir side is called the upstream, and the releasing side is called the downstream. Next, when coming to the dam body, we already told that in reservoir side the dam wall is a straight shape, and in the front view, we releasing side, downstream side, we have spillway gates and the structure like S shape, different structures, steps shapes that we'll later discuss in third unit. So it is called the spillway side. The excess water, flood water is released from the spillway gates. So excess flood water is released from the spillway gate, and the water released for agriculture, irrigation, and hydropower purposes released from here. This is called the sluice way. Okay. Next, the issues discussed in this chapter are selection of site for dam and reservoir, the relative merits of different types of dams, storage capacity, and purposes of dams and reservoirs. Now we will discuss with purpose of reservoirs. So the major purpose of reservoirs are irrigation. Through for a dam, we constructed the canals. Like for example, Nagarjuna Sagar Dam we have. It has two canals, left canal and right canal. They are constructed for irrigation to meet the irrigation needs of the farmers. So these canals run through different districts. For example, left canal runs Nalgonda, Krishna, Guntur districts and meet their irrigation requirements. Next to water supply for domestic use. So drinking, agriculture, drinking purpose, this water will be used. Industrial uses, for different industrial needs, the reservoir water will be used. Next, flood control, very important, flood control. So when more rains are occurred, floods are generated automatically. If there is no reservoir is there, the flood will immerse the villages. So to protect the villages and cities from the flood, to arrest the flood water is important. So here for arresting the flood water, we are construct the dams and reservoirs. Hydroelectric power generation. Next, when we constructed the dam, it is used for generating the hydropower. So major hydropower stations are at dams areas. Sri Salem hydropower station, Nagarjuna Sagar hydropower stations, like that. Next, navigation. So when the reservoirs are formed, navigation is automatically gained. Through ships, boats, it decreases the length between the distance between the two cities. Next, preservation of aquatic life. So through conservation of water, there is possible to grow the aquatic life of fishes, prawns, like that. Next, soil conservation and reclamation of wastelands. Automatically, when water is stored and released to agriculture areas, the soil conservation and water conservation will be more. They infiltrate more groundwater into the ground. It will help to grow the crops. So automatically, soil conservation will takes place. Next, we will discuss the types of reservoirs. Majorly, we divided the reservoirs into two types: single purpose reservoirs, multi-purpose reservoirs. Single purpose reservoirs means you construct the reservoir for single purpose only. For example, the reservoir is constructed for only flood control, or only for storage, or only for agriculture, like that. Multi-purpose reservoirs are used for multi-purpose to utilize the water for multi-purposes. At a time, two or more than two, like hydropower generation and irrigation, hydropower generation, irrigation and drinking, like that. But we have one doubt. For example, if we constructed a dam for flood control only, later the water will be utilized for drinking purpose. Then the dam reservoir will meet two needs. So it is called a multi-purpose reservoir? No. At the design time, what we have think, it is single or multi-purpose. That is called only single purpose. So in design, it is designed only for flood control. That's why it is a single purpose. Maybe later it is served for drinking or agriculture or hydropower, anything. But in design period, it is designed only to meet the flood control. So it is called single purpose. Multi-purpose at the design time, it meet two or more than two requirements. So it is called the multi-purpose reservoirs. So again, single purpose reservoirs are divided into two types: storage reservoirs, flood control reservoirs, and distribution reservoirs. Storage reservoirs means the water stored at peak runoff or peak flood time, and later it will serve the needs of drinking, irrigation and agriculture purposes. So that is called the storage reservoirs. Next, flood control reservoirs. It constructed to arrest the flood water. So it is called the flood control reservoirs. Next, distribution reservoirs. Distribution reservoirs are constructed to distribute the water. So distribute the water into different places like tanks. Next, again, flood control reservoirs is divided into two types: detention reservoirs and retarding reservoirs. That means flood control reservoirs with gates and without gates. Now we will go for each type detailed. Single purpose reservoir. This type of reservoir is formed mainly to serve a single purpose, such as storage for irrigation, flood control, water supply, etc. Multi-purpose reservoir. This type of reservoir is formed to serve many purposes, such as irrigation, water supply, flood control, hydroelectric power generation, preservation of aquatic life, like that. So this is the example of storage reservoir. This is the reservoir and this is the spillway gate. Next, storage reservoirs. The storage reservoir is formed by constructing a dam across a river valley. The idea of constructing such a reservoir is to store the excess water which flows through the river during the high floods or rainy season. This stored water is then utilized for various purposes such as irrigation, water supply, preservation of aquatic life, hydroelectric power generation, etc. A storage reservoir may be named as single-purpose reservoir if it is used to serve one purpose, or multi-purpose reservoir if it is used to serve many purposes. So, storage reservoir may come under single-purpose reservoir or multi-purpose reservoirs. Next, flood control reservoirs. Flood control reservoirs are formed by constructing dams at suitable places in the catchment area or river valley to store the flood water temporarily so that the downstream area may not get damaged by sudden high flood discharges. What is the catchment area? We have we have two areas: catchment area and command area. Catchment area means where the reservoir collect water. That place is called the catchment area. Command area means where the stored water is utilized. That area is called the command area. Okay, so catchment area is the water collecting place is called the catchment area. Water utilizing area is called the command area. Okay, so this flood control reservoir will temporarily store the flood water and later it discharges to downstream side. The stored water is then allowed to flow or released gradually without causing any harm to the low-lying area on downstream side. This type of reservoir is designated as single purpose reservoir. So a reservoir majorly reservoir, this is the striped dam representation with it striped and then its side curved. In reservoir side, this area represents the flood control volume. So flood water will be stopped here and later it is discharged into downstream. Next, again the flood control reservoir is divided into two types, retarding reservoirs and detention reservoirs. A retarding reservoir is the one in which the spillway and outlets are not controlled by gates or walls. If a dam without gates, that are called the retarding reservoirs. For example, earth dams, rock fill dams, the spillway gates are not on the top of the dam. They are designed at a separate site. So earth dams, rock fill dams are examples of retarding reservoirs. They moderate the flood peak by passing the discharge downstream depending upon the water level in the reservoir. It has uncontrolled outlets and the maximum discharge through the outlets do not exceed the safe carrying capacity of downstream river during the highest flood season. What are the advantages of these retarding reservoirs? There are no gates, hence possibility of human error is eliminated. The cost of gate installation is saved. The ideal location of such a reservoir is above a city to be operation of gates. Next, second one, detention reservoirs. A flood control reservoir with gate installation at the spillway and outlet is termed as detention basin. The gate installation provides more flexibility of operation and thus increase the usefulness of reservoir. There is a possibility of passing a maximum safe discharge to downstream side depending on the situation. Detention reservoirs are superior to retarding reservoirs. The disadvantage of detention basin is the possibility of human error during the operation of gates. So detention reservoirs is the reservoirs which have gate installations like Nagarjuna Sagar, Srisailam are the best examples. So detention reservoirs with gates, so the water will be stored with gates, operated with gates. And retarding reservoirs, here no gates are there. So these are the examples of retarding reservoirs. Next, distribution reservoirs. A distribution reservoir is a small storage reservoir used for water supply in a city. A distribution reservoir accounts for the varying rate of water during the day. The distribution reservoir is not formed by constructing a dam across a river or valley. So, the distribution reservoir is not constructed on the river or at a dam site. It is constructed at some distance of the dam or reservoir. There, the reservoir water is collected a day and from that place it will be distributed, because in some places it not possible to construct direct canal from the dam. So at such places we go for distribution reservoir. Okay, it is constructed by masonry work or concrete work in the form of a rectangular or circular tank at suitable places near a town or city. The water from the river or lake is pumped in this reservoir and stored there for supplying to the consumers of the town or city. Such distribution reservoirs permit the pumping plants and water treatment works to operate at a constant rate. The varying demand rate exceeding to constant pumping rate is met from the distribution reservoirs. So it is like a tank type constructed at some distance from the reservoir. Next, multi-purpose reservoirs. A reservoir planned and constructed to serve not only one purpose but various purposes together is called the multi-purpose reservoirs. So, Bakra Nangal project, Nagarjuna Sagar project, Srisalem Sagar project, all these are examples of multi-purpose reservoirs. The major problems faced by reservoirs are percolation losses of water from reservoir basins. So, where the basement is leak or cracks are more, the pervious rock is present, there the percolation losses are more. So, the storing capacity of water is reduced. Next, sedimentation problem, very important problem. Gradual silting up of reservoir is decreasing the storing capacity and lifetime of a reservoir. So, this is the major problems faced by reservoirs. Next, in next class, we will discuss with the site selection of reservoirs.